men's health matters. Men's roles have changed. It's good to get in there and strengthen the family. And this is what this study has demonstrated. Let's start getting in there. Let's start strengthening and supporting our men, especially expecting fathers, because what came out a lot in the study as well is that once you became a parent, especially the fathers, you started reflecting on your childhood. Was my dad there? How can I be a better father?
Welcome to the Emerging Minds podcast.
Hi, I'm Rosie Shellen, and you're listening to an Emerging Minds podcast. But before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the land, seas and waterways of the Aboriginal peoples in Broome and pay my respects to the ancestors, elders, knowledge holders and future generations, and for the nurturing care they have provided to this country for over 60,000 years. In this episode, you will hear from Erica Spry and Zaccariah Cox as they share what they heard when speaking with expecting and new fathers in rural and remote communities of Western Australia. Thanks for speaking with me today, Erica and Zac. Firstly, though, could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
So my name is Erica Spry. My Aboriginal bush name is Rabunjin, and I always start that I'm Jadawan's daughter. So we're up in the Kimberley and just out of Broome, Jowie country. So I'm connected out there. I'm a traditional owner. So grew up out on country and all around the place really. And I've got family over in the East Kimberley, Gidja family over in Mormon community at Turkey Creek. So travel through the Kimberley, but across Australia, that stayed in Tiana. It's home here. So I work for two organisations. So the first one is the Kimberley Aboriginal Medical Services as a research officer, and then with the University of Western Australia, the Royal Clinical School, as a research fellow.
And Zaccariah Cox. I'm of the Limanburu people, a bit south of America's country there, the Bardi Jawi people there, and also the Gidja people as well from around the Warman Horse Creek country there. And I'm the social and emotional wellbeing manager at KAMS here in Broome.
Tell me a little bit about the work you've been doing in the antenatal period with Aboriginal men.
One of the projects that I got to be a part of in the Kimberley was actually starting off working with the women up here, so Aboriginal women in the Kimberley region, and we were wanting to, have conversations and find out, how do we improve antenatal care? How do we make it better for the mum and the pup? And so we focused a lot on women and improving this system in that way. They're meeting their needs. Through that process, we did a qualitative study, and I was called out around the Kimberley to various remote communities and towns. And in particular, I was in Broome one day, and I was tracking down a mum that fitted our criteria to have an interview. And in order to get to her, I found her mum. And I said, "Where's your daughter? Let's, we're trying to interview so we can improve antenatal care." And she goes, why is it that you always just focus on the woman, the mum? It takes two to make a baby. Why don't you start including the fathers? So this is the senior elder here in Yaru country, and I'm being told that. And I've been brought up by my elders and, for all our family's best interests. And so I had to really listen here. And being in this wonderful space of health research, I was in a opportunity, in a place where I could go back and say to the team, look, we're getting direction by a senior elder to include fathers because there's a huge gap there. We must respect what she's saying. There's always focus on the mum, expecting mother. But, the father's involved too. So how do we start going forward to include our expecting fathers and really start to work towards the family unit of care as a model of care for the family? And so that's how it evolved into getting the men's paper started. And we did a little bit out in other areas, but we sort of came back into the Broome area. And then Zac came along and, we're between us, we did a few of the interviews. Zac went out and scoped out a few, and on my side, I had to go with culturally appropriate family kinship where I could actually go out and say to like a brother of mine, like a cousin brother, or I could go out and say to like one of my older sons, my nephews, you're just become a dad, or, you're expecting your first child, when we want to include fathers, and do you want to be a part of sharing your story so that we can start to voice, and amplify, I suppose, the needs of our fathers, and then take it from there, how we could work this into the system to be able to deliver better services, not just for the mum, but the father, and possibly, forward planning as a family unit. And so I managed to get a couple of the interviews done, and they felt in a safe place to share. And I think they felt relieved too that someone heard them and they were being heard, and that we could go back and try to make things better for our families, because you find a lot of our mob, they're just waiting for that opportunity. They just need that voice. They need that voice to be heard, so that then you can have others in other levels advocate their needs, right down at the grassroots community level, reaching the systems, all our policies and that to change, to make it better for our whole community, the individual, the family, and then it, ripples out to your community.
Yes, I think Erica's covered sort of the beginnings to why and how interviewing men about their experiences with antenatal services and pregnancy came about, and sort of why I got involved, sort of pressured. I wasn't working for the research team there, but was strongly encouraged to come and help out and to assist the team in conducting or performing the interviews with Aboriginal men in Broome, and obviously with my local knowledge of the town and men who, whose partners were expecting or who I had the knowledge of that their partners were pregnant. That sort of was helpful in a sense as well, having that community knowledge about who to reach out to contact, to gauge or to check their interest in being interviewed with their experiences with the antenatal services. So I agreed to helping out and to assisting with these interviews. Research was new to me at the time, and so I thought, it was a good opportunity to get some, professional development and some learning in a different field, and really sort of took it on board and sort of started to reach out and lock in some interviews with local men in the town who, pretty much all of them I had relationships with, whether they were friends, whether they were family members, or whether, we were known to each other. That was quite, I suppose, rewarding as well, in a sense, to be able to encourage men to talk about their experiences, because we know men find it hard sometimes to express their feelings and their experiences and sort of what it's like for them when their partners do become pregnant. I think, as Erica identified, a lot of the focus is on the women, which we understand that it needs to be, but, understanding and moving away from the sort of the traditional pathways and processes and procedures to caring for and looking after women who become pregnant, and identifying and acknowledging that obviously men play a big part in that as well, and sort of trying to understand their perception and their experiences through that process as well was quite rewarding. And obviously men, I found when I interviewed them, they found that reflecting back on their experiences was really sort of helpful to them as well. In a sense, it sort of gave them more of a sort of clear understanding of sort of what was happening for them and how important it was for them, and how they had got to the point at that point in time and feeling how they felt, I suppose, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So what did you hear? What were the things that you heard?
That the men felt the responsibility, obviously, of such a big change, I suppose, in their lives, and understanding that their lives were pretty much going to change in a significant way. The second part to that was that they felt it important to be a part of attending antenatal services and being involved with antenatal care of their partners. Some of the men reflected by saying that they weren't too keen in attending some of the antenatal classes, but they'd obviously attended, not forced themselves, or sort of pushed through to attend with their partners, and the outcomes were quite sort of promising, or they felt that they'd learned a lot out of those classes and had really sort of valued attending, and were thankful that they did go to attend those classes whilst being reluctant in the first instance. One person in particular even went as far as downloading a development app, a baby development app, to sort of check every day and every week on the different stages and the different sort of growth patterns of the child or the baby at the time. I suppose one of the concerning findings was that all participants had experienced 3 or more significant stresses in their lives during the antenatal period and at the time of the interview. And, they range from things like financial problems, employment problems, accommodation challenges, and family problems as well, which included, people passing away in their family and stuff. So that was quite not surprising for me as an Aboriginal male and father myself, but obviously, really identified and pointed out that, our mob and our mothers and our fathers do, experience significant stress during that antenatal period. And, when it should be a smooth and a calming and a time where people shouldn't have to worry about those things. But we know that's the reality for a lot of our people up here and across Australia.
Yeah, they were the key themes. But I think the other thing is that some of them did attend the antenatal appointments at some, throughout the pregnancy when they could. Otherwise, they were out of town for work. And that was one of the big factors that we identified. A lot of FIFO work around here. But when they did attend the health service, some of them felt included. They were heard. They could ask questions. And others didn't really feel like they were, met in a cultural appropriate way. They then called out, how can we get perhaps an Aboriginal health worker or practitioner in the maternal child health team so that when the mother does present at an antenatal clinic, there's a male Aboriginal health worker practitioner there and say, hey, Dad, how are you going today? And some of them felt like they weren't asked how they felt. They're expecting father, but no one asked how they felt. It was all focused on the mum and the bub's development, fair enough. But as the father, he was also experienced all those emotions as well, but no one did a check-in on him. And then when you went to look at the resources, it's all woman focused and it's all baby focused. But, the father felt, can I get some resources here, some flyers, some pamphlets, and can someone one-on-one explain to me as well? Because perhaps she's in one of those days where she's finding it trying and I want to be her support. And, make sure that I'm doing the best that I can, that we're doing changes together to prepare for the baby's arrival. But who's checking in on me? And can I have perhaps separate appointments in this antenatal space where I can say, tell me what she needs or how can I best support her? So this was reflected in the paper as well. And it's what Zac had brought up. It's not your traditional style. This particular cohort of men shared this. But in the Kimberley, we also know our diversity as Aboriginal people. We got many languages. So we have over 26, 27 different Aboriginal language groups. And we come from different countries. Even though we're a Kimberley region, we're quite diverse on that note. And so we got traditional cultural practices where we do our law and culture, customs. And so some of the fathers will have cultural appropriate ways where they only want to know minimum of antenatal care stuff, whereas others are contemporary. And I don't want to sound like I'm judging, but everyone is allowed to be how they feel it, suits them. It's their type of model of care for themselves. And I say it's case by case. And so, when a mother is birthing and if you're traditional, the father will wait outside, whereas others want to be in the room with their partner and actually do one-on-one supports. So we don't discriminate against the Aboriginal person. We're not here to divvy up all that type of, statuses there. We simply say that when someone presents at the antenatal clinic that, they meet the mother and father, should the mother, and father want to come along. But just extending that out there is the beginnings to, really getting the family unit together.
For a lot of Aboriginal men, times are changing, and for a lot of Aboriginal men, we are finding it important now that we do have a big part to play in pregnancy and in looking after yourself and looking after your partner, being involved with the antenatal care services, being at the birth. A lot of the men were intending to be at the birth in the room. I know I was myself at the birth of my daughter and in the room, with my daughter, which pretty sure my father wasn't, but the times were different back then in those days. And since no one's fault, no one's to blame, and even if that's still the case, in different areas across the Kimberley and across Australia where men stay out of women's business, which includes pregnancy, then that's right too. For them or for that mob, then there's no right or wrong answers and how people are progressing and how people are progressing culturally and how people want to stay and what they want to believe and follow. And obviously others have different ways of thinking and different perceptions and and understandings of what their role is and how involved they should be, I suppose.
This study, we see it as opening the door, that currently, it's female focus, it's mother and bub focus. And so this was a sample frame to start that conversation, to start that spotlight that fathers do want to be included. So what Zac spoke about, it was not what we'd planned to. We're not here to exclude anybody. We want to include as many people as we can. But this particular cohort was opening the door to start the conversation. And so, when we now look forward that, we want to do further in this space, we then want to be able to bring others in, from all the background that we spoke on. Men's health matters. Men's roles have changed. It's good to get in there and strengthen the family. And this is what this study has demonstrated. Let's start getting in there. Let's start strengthening and supporting our men, especially expecting fathers, because what came out a lot in the study as well is that once you became a parent, especially the fathers, what Zac shared, you started reflecting on your childhood. Was my dad there? How can I be a better father? I better start making changes now. And as a family, we're going to do changes together to really give our child the best start. But they called on health services to hear them and invite them in and include them in the care. But they also respectfully said, we know mum and bub comes first, but wherever opportunity is available, please include the fathers and have that conversation. Do the check-in. Mum, are you feeling comfortable today? Your partner want to come? Dad, how are you? On the other cultural side of it too is that the fathers would go out on country and go fishing, and their little fishing trips, they'd all come together and share stories and get tips on how to better parent or what might be coming along, and they also reached out to the extended family. So in Aboriginal families, it's not just your nuclear mother, father and child or other siblings, it's our extended family. Our cousins are our brothers or our sisters, and our uncles are our dads, and we've got many grandfathers and many grandmothers. And so you go and look in the family and you go, oh, look at their style. That's a good role model. They're up to number baby 3. I'm going to go get some tips from that brother. And then I'm going to go see the other, brother over here. And I'm going to get some tips from him, So that's how our men have been functioning. They've been going out there on our Aboriginal, extended family supports. And this is great because the more support you have, the more protective factors you got. And you got that father feeling well, you got the mother feeling well, you got the family feeling well. And that's what we want, best starts. And if you got the mother and the father connecting with that baby before the baby's born, and a lot of what came out in the paper is most of them attended the antenatal scan, hey? They wanted to know, oh, boy or girl, and others just, where they're developing. But it's connecting. It's that first connection. And then what they say on the statistics is that grows that family, to be stronger, to then take on what life is about to bring.
It provides a unique opportunity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Did the men speak about their experiences with mainstream or non-Aboriginal health services?
Well, in Broome and the way that the system works here is that I think the early stages, you can just go to your AMS, you go to see your GP and the maternal health nurse. But for the scans and as the pregnancy progresses, that's when people have to go over the hospital to use the government service. And obviously, if the relationships between the health professionals at the AMS and the hospital are good, and you've got the same people there, then it's usually a pretty smooth process. But given the high turnover of staff we have in the Kimberley with maternal health nurses, obstetricians, GPs, sometimes that can be a bit frustrating for anyone, and then especially with our mom having to see a new specialist or a new health professional, halfway through or towards the end of popular pregnancy. This is pretty common for anyone, but with our mob, they like consistency, I suppose, and to build that trust takes them a bit of time. So
what Zac's saying is, if you get a straight, like your 40 weeks gestation and your pregnancy, and your clinic is the main place, your primary health care, and then your secondary is you go to the hospital, and through that 20 or 40 weeks gestation, you got various tests at the time, and a lot of the comments coming back from the fathers was, can you explain what these tests are? Because you're telling the mum, and then how am I supposed to support her when I'm not sure about it as well? And then is she able to hear the healthcare provider so that she is listening to understand what is being said to her? Because sometimes if you're a first mum or that's the third child, not every pregnancy is the same. So you can't assume that they're all the same or the mother knows better because it's her third child. No, every pregnancy is different. And so you imagine a father's point of view that they have a little bit of complications with the second child. And so he's extra worried about this third baby coming along. If he's not included in the consult, how is he going to support his wife? So these are real issues, and it varies what Zac touched on, and we have shared care here. So you're always exposed to different health professionals along that antenatal period, in your local AMS to private GP, general practitioner, or over to the hospital, and you're in the ultrasound setup, or you're going in on the ward and you manage to go and get a maternity visit before the birthing takes place. So this is what mothers are subjected to, but fathers as well, going in and scoping out the maternity ward before the arrival of the child going into birth, because as soon as she goes into, the baby's coming, you imagine the father. He doesn't know, was this a fast process? Is this a slow process? How do I go about here being actual supports? Because when you're into that third stage, you don't know how your birthing's going to go. Everyone wants a great outcome, and this is what the father wants. He wants it all to go smooth. And unless he's informed, how can he bring that extra support in there? Because he's the first in the relationship, and then our extended family come in, and the beauty about our families and our fathers and all that, we'll all get in there behind them too, I'll say, what now, bro? How you going? And we'll tag, you want to have a yarn, So it'd be good if, in the services that they have that space, because some of our expecting fathers or brothers sometimes don't want to go to a family member. They've had a fallout with someone and, they want to go to a service provider because they might want privacy. That might be their style of how they want to understand things better, to be able to be that support for the partner, So I think that they should be given these options, and, and it's time that this happens. Let's hope that message gets out there. We get a change in the primary health provider, that we get a change in our child maternal health units, that they do bring in Aboriginal health workers and practitioners, and male ones, to support the expecting father, and females as well. But I think that's the best beginnings, for all our children going forward. And this is also a reach out, I say, too, not just for Aboriginal fathers, but maybe all fathers of all ethnicities out there too. But look, I think they were just glad to share their stories and, really say this is how we're feeling, and open that door for other fathers, so we can think about then the cultural one that's got a different type of balancing in their life. They're coming in from a remote community, because their partner has to go do a scan at 20 weeks and the baby's not looking well. And then all of a sudden she's going to be flying down to Perth to have the baby. And where does that leave the father? He'd probably want to go as the first baby, or maybe it's the second one or the third one, and he has to get two babies babysat so he could go down and help his partner, because this is real world here. This is lived experiences here. All this happens, and the fathers have all this. But I call that to the fathers that aren't able to be there for their partner, because there are breakups as well. And so you got to be a bit sensitive of dealing with a partner, like a mum with they've separated in a relationship. But I mean, this is why you do case by case, and then you weigh up the sensitivity of it, and you always do the risk factors. What is the risk involved, or what are the protective factors? How can we get a better model of care or support for our fathers? But be mindful to the expecting mother. Have they got a good relationship, or do we need to be mindful on our approach? And how do we culturally do this? What's the culturally appropriate way? What's the culturally a safe way? And not just saying these words, but actually put it into practice. As soon as they walk in, they feel welcome. The room is where they're comfortable. The they're greeted well, and just that common gesture to make someone comfortable and just allow that space.
What would your advice be for a non-Aboriginal, say a health worker that's just started with a mum? What advice would you give to step out of the square and to start those conversations for that, where the system doesn't support it?
I think just, where possible and where people can, be as open-minded to the point of trying to understand the mother and if the father's there, trying to hear their story, where they're at in terms of their lives and the pregnancy, and learning about what they're experiencing at home in their lives, to be able to treat them or provide care in a way that reflects, how they're feeling at the time. Again, I would say really sort of valuable cultural awareness training as well to help non-Indigenous staff and staff new to the area understand the context of the community, the town that they're working in, the different, tribal groups, the different Aboriginal groups that obviously reside in that town, the different families and the different dynamics of town or community life, talking to Aboriginal GPs and nurses if they're in the organisation about, how they should be approaching providing care, using health workers as well as a go-to to prompt sort of, what they should be looking for, what questions they should be asking, that sort of sit outside the clinical documentation or the clinical stuff that resources that, are currently in use.
So, like when you're in front of an Aboriginal person and take all that into account, what Zac has shared. You're coming in up here into the Kimberley, it's diverse. Not all Aboriginal people are the same. That's right across Australia, and that is true. And in this particular region, the languages, over 26, 27 different languages, our ways, our styles of doing things, but what's the most common thing you do with a person is you just have a yarn. And sometimes you don't have to go straight into the medical consult or the procedures that you have to do. Just a straight up, hi, how you going? It's this lovely weather. We're finally in winter. I hear the southeasterlies blowing and that fish is running. Hey, what's that famous fish they get here? And then start a conversation and, because it's a Walga season. The Yaru language is salmon season, Whiskas, threadfin salmon season is the best, and if you start that in a gentle yarning approach and you share, and I learnt this from a practicing GP where he shared this to me, is you start your consult with that, you yarn, how are you going today? How's your partner? How's the children? How's your mum? Is your grandfather all right? And then you make little notes to that. So the next time they come in, they're not a number, they're not a name, they're a person. And you go, hey, that last time I saw you, you said that you were going on a trip. How did that go? And then that sort of breaks the ice. And then you could start going, oh, how are you feeling today? We got to, do some obs on you and then start your medical consult. But a couple of 5 minutes or so into getting that background, that sort of sets the scene to then getting you comfortable to be able to be honest, transparent, and then share in your care, together.
I'm really thankful for you sharing this yarn. It's been amazing, and I'm really excited to see what's going to grow from it.
It was the elder that alerted us to include fathers in the antenatal care process, and that led our team to, after we published this particular paper, to be recognised and win an award on a national level for the Ray James Award in the Health Promotion Journal of Australia, and for our organisations, here, particularly here in the Kimberley and especially in the Aboriginal community control health sector. We thank them for that recognition, and we hope the voices get out there to give supports back to all our families led by that elder.
Visit our website at emergingminds.com.au to access a range of resources to assist your practice. Brought to you by the National Workforce Centre for Child Mental Health, led by Emerging Minds, the centre is funded by the Australian Government Department of Health and Aged Care under the National Support for Child and Youth Mental Health Program.